Alrighty, so I thought I'd make this video about the transition from a standard American diet to that of a vegetarian diet, to that of a vegan diet, and possibly to that of a raw vegan diet. Because I think that when you start going vegetarian or something, usually it's usually like a process. It's usually a cycle. You know, you start out when you're a younger child, you're standard American diet. You know, you're eating fast food, blah, blah, blah. Meat is incorporated in your diet, and it's pretty standard. But then once you get older, maybe you go into a vegetarian diet. And I'm making this video because I think that it's a pretty natural progression to go from standard American diet to vegetarian. And once you're at that point, you usually go to that of a vegan and maybe further. Vegan is where a lot of people stop, but some people go on to be raw foodists and then possibly breatharians, which if you don't know what a breatharian is, it's people who think they can live off of like the vitamin D from the sun, and a lot of people joke on them, but I don't know, that's your choice. But that's usually the progression: is standard American diet, vegetarian, vegan, raw food, and then some people go off the deep end and go to breatharian. But so yeah, I wanted to make a video about going through these transitions, but making them easier. Because a lot of people think, you know, I can't go vegetarian, I can't go vegan because it's so difficult, I can't give up that thing. But what you have to think about is it doesn't have to be overnight. There's no rule that you have to go vegetarian overnight. There's no rule that you have to go vegan overnight. You can do it like a slow progression. So let's talk about that. In a standard American diet, you get your protein. We'll talk about your macronutrients. We get your protein from mainly meat, dairy, eggs, things like that. You get your carbohydrates from whether it be potato chips or fruit or things along that nature. And then for your fat, you get it from a lot of your meat, your dairy, your eggs, things like that. And the first step is to transition from that to a vegetarian diet. And there's a lot of things that people have come up with that are really good ways to make the transition not so hard. One of them being Meatless Mondays. If you've never heard of Meatless Monday, it's basically Meatless Monday. You don't eat any meat on a Monday. And so you start your week out, if you're the mom who goes shopping or anybody who goes shopping, it doesn't matter. You would plan on Monday not to eat meat, for no part of your meal to include a meat item. So that's a really good way to start your progression from a standard American diet to a vegetarian diet. Other things you can do is you can just elaborate on that. Instead of Meatless Mondays, you can have meatless weekends. You can cut out one meat item at a time. Say you're a big chicken eater, but you don't really like beef. Like I loved chicken. And I'll admit that as a vegan, I really liked chicken. But I wasn't a big beef eater. So something I could have done is I could have cut out all the beef. I could have cut out hamburgers. And that would be my first step. And what I'm trying to get to here is that you don't have to go do it so fast. There's always a progression. You can take it slower. Some people can dive right in, but you definitely don't have to. So when you go from standard American diet to a vegetarian diet, your macros are going to look a little different. You'll no longer be able to eat meat to get a lot of your protein and fat, but you will still be able to eat dairy and eggs. And that can account for most of your protein and your fat. Carbohydrates can still come in the form of, you know, anything. Usually food items that are white have carbohydrates in them, like potatoes and chips and things like that. Those can still be your carbohydrates. Carbohydrates, for the most part, don't have to change in any diet. Like, you get a lot of carbs from fruit. Fruit, all across the board, everybody loves fruit. Fruit's always good for you, so those aren't really difficult. But your protein and your fats are usually what changes. So now that you're in a vegetarian diet, say you've taken a couple months or you've done it overnight, doesn't matter, but you've transitioned from standard American diet to vegetarian. Now, you've eliminated meat, but you still have the dairy and the eggs. And most importantly, you still have cheese. And cheese is usually the biggest thing, the hardest thing for people to give up when going from vegetarian to vegan. Now, as I said before, you don't have to do the change overnight. You can make it a slow progression. Say you really like cheese, but you're not that big of a milk person. Okay, slowly start taking milk out of your breakfast or out of your meals. But you can replace it too. That's a good thing. With milk, they have so many different kinds of milks. I mean, you have rice milk, you have almond milk, you have cashew milk, you have hemp milk. There's everything can be made into milk, basically. It's just like cow's milk, dairy milk is from an animal, but they can make milk pretty much out of anything. It's just a process. Like, you can look up on YouTube, if you don't want to buy milk, maybe milk is expensive. Even if you don't even want to be a vegetarian or a vegan and you just want to get cheaper milk, you can actually make soy milk. I think is a little harder, but cashew milk, hemp milk, almond milk. These things are really easy to make it. Like if you have a Vitamix, I have one, and they're great tools. I advise everybody to buy them, and you can buy them cheap. And I was gonna make a video about how to make it, or how to buy one for cheaper. But yeah, you basically just like soak some almonds, throw them in a blender, blend it up, and then strain out the almonds. It's really easy. You can go on YouTube and look up like a million videos on how to make almond milk. But needless to say, so switching from vegetarian to vegan, you can do the slow progression, you can do it overnight, but cheese is gonna be a huge deal to people. And a good way to cut out cheese is to do it slowly. Because if you're obsessed with cheese, cutting it out real fast might make you think, oh, this just isn't for me, I can't do this. Cheese, I need my cheese, which is a huge deal for a lot of people. But if you do it slowly, it might be a little better for you. So now you're in a vegan diet. You've cut out dairy, you've cut out eggs, you've cut out all forms of meat, anything that had an eyeball you don't eat, no fish, no beef, no chicken, nothing like that. Now you're on a vegan diet. And when you're on a vegan diet, your protein sources are going to look a little more like this. You're going to have beans, legumes, let's see what else. You can get it from quinoa, certain kinds of grains, things like that. Those are going to be what your protein sources are made up of. And a big thing with people is they always say that vegans won't get enough protein. That is so untrue. If you are calorie sufficient, you know, they usually say like 2,500 to 3,000 calories for a male, 2,000 calories for a woman. You're going to be protein sufficient. There isn't even a documented like term for protein deficiency. It's like not a thing. Like people think that when you run out of protein, you're going to die or something. That doesn't happen. And I'm not trying to sound like a stuck-up vegan or anything like that. It's just true. If you are calorie sufficient, you're going to be protein sufficient. If you're a bodybuilder or something like that, yes, you obviously need more protein. What is protein? Protein is to repair things in your body. And obviously, if you're an average Joe who lives a kind of sedentary life, sufficient protein will be met with sufficient calorie intake. But yeah, stop talking about that. So protein, now you got beans, legumes, things like that. On your carbohydrates, they usually stay the same throughout any diet. And then on your fat sources, you can get it from olive oil. If you do soy milk or something like that, that has some fat in it. A lot of the beans are high fat content as well, which is interesting. There's this really good YouTube channel, Nutrition Facts. That's the YouTube channel. And it's a guy who basically takes all of the nutritional information that's put out within like over a month or something like that, and he backs it into a video, which is really easy for everybody to digest. And a thing he was doing one time was talking about, people always say that beans or nuts are going to make you fat. They always say that the fat content, because nuts are high in fat, they're also high in protein. And they say that nuts are going to make you fat. Well, he actually sifted through the research and he found that peanuts are pretty much the only nut that they could find that actually made you fat. And it wasn't even like a dramatic fat gain, but it was the only one that really had an effect. So when you're going through your protein sources, you know, you have the beans, legumes, things like that, but you might want to be conscious about nuts and stuff like that because they are higher fat content. Carbs the same, and those are your fats. And then say you want to go, not many people, well, I shouldn't say that, just a lot of people stop at vegan. And a lot of people stop at vegetarian as well. But if you want to progress all the way to a raw foodist, which in my opinion is like the healthiest diet possible, which is, if you don't know what a raw food diet is, it's raw whole food eating. Basically, you're only going to eat basically like fruits and vegetables. You can eat other things, but for the most part, you're going to eat fruits and vegetables. If you just YouTube raw food, there'll be millions of videos if you've never heard of it. But on a raw food diet, where your diet is consistent basically of like some grains, you get a lot of fruits and vegetables, all your macros are going to come from that. Your protein is going to be from your greens and your vegetables and stuff like that. But you can also soak things, because raw foodists don't heat their food. That's the whole point. Raw is like, some people have different definitions. Under 110 degrees, under 140. Basically, when it goes above that level, it's considered cooked, which they believe is less healthy. So when you're on the raw food diet, all those sources, all your macros are probably gonna come from the same things, because you're gonna be eating a lot of fruits, a lot of vegetables. You can have grains, like I said, like some people eat rice and quinoa and stuff like that, but it's soaked. Rather than heating it up, you're gonna soak it. And they usually soak it for up to like 6 hours or overnight. But that's about all I wanted to talk about. Is just, the main point of this is that you don't have to transition overnight. It's not something you have to jump right into. A lot of people do, but that doesn't mean you have to. Being vegetarian, being vegan, whatever, is for the long haul. You're doing this to improve yourself for the long run. So, you don't have to just jump into it. That could scare you out of doing it altogether. So I think, basically, sometimes it can be better to progress from a sad diet to vegetarian slower, because it makes it easier for you. It's not going to be as big of a shock for both you, your system, your taste buds, everything like that. If you like these videos, like, subscribe, the usual things people say at the end of videos, and watch my other videos. If you watch these videos, please leave a question. I really want to make a lot of these videos, and I've learned a lot from my obsession with nutrition since I was basically 12 years old, and being vegetarian and vegan, all these things. So yeah, just put any questions if you have them, and everybody have a good one.